hate their company or something. I don't know. If you're proficient, I think it goes together with dedication to the profession, loyalty to your company, and so forth. Core sourcing proficiencies are not specific to particular locations, industries, or work functions. And we are seeing that in industry, people are often after sources who have hired in this industry, which is, or would assign sources to work only on a particular narrow range of roles. It's a mistake. The real sourcing comes when the person is able to source for anyone, any location. The 6 competency areas that we define are important to our methodology, and what we do is our assessment is based on short, practical, real-life challenges, just like ones that you may run into while doing your sourcing. So we have had our exams for years now, since what, 8 years now. We repeat quarterly. We create short sourcing challenges. Obviously, we have a pool from before. 60 persons, one exam, covering the 6 core areas. We retest all the questions and create new pool of questions. Then we run an online test-taking grading system, collect results, feedback, respond to requests. Some people retake the exams. We've been doing it for a long time now. Now, the new exciting thing is our finally completed book,
Unmuted.
Sourcing Answers, that was...
Sorry, I just wanted to chime in there. I think we actually have a few more, might be better to cover that one a little bit later on in the presentation. We have a few more slides put together for that one. Might be better to maybe jump back a little bit and explain some of the fundamentals about what the book is about first, I think. Just to avoid getting ahead of ourselves. So if we talked about just a moment ago our approach to sourcing skills assessments being competency-based, and that we primarily identified 6 core areas that we believe are the most important to focus on, and our data and conversation with clients tends to bear that out. Those are, broadly speaking, exploratory research, Google search, cross-referencing, X-ray search is somewhat of a subset of Google search, proficient use of LinkedIn, and then, of course, the ability to source from other social networks, large and small, which also encompasses the identification and selection of target social networks for sourcing. And we, just to kind of briefly provide a little bit more information about, what these, core competency areas cover, what they're about. For us, our exploratory research category and the questions we ask around this are really about skills that will help you answer questions arising around requisition intake, as well as some challenges that can come up midstream in any sourcing or recruitment project. We have the overall focus here being on the ability to gain useful information quickly to address questions, right? Some example tasks in that category, of course, may involve particular companies to source from, or backgrounds on particular professions, other information that you may not have or may need to quickly develop when encountering a new sourcing or recruitment project.
Well, let me go to the categories and to the slides about categories.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Well, I'm running the just to clarify it. If you check the view, I'm advancing as we go. So we're just about to hit the Google search. I want to make sure, Aruna, you're kind of following the same view. I hope so. Pardon us, folks. A little technical juggling.
Oh, it wasn't. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No worries. In fact, if you want to take over on this one and run through the remainder.
I will. Mm-hmm. So exploratory research is extremely important. And
Yeah,
now
yeah.
we're talking Google search.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, that's where we're at.
So,
Got it. Thanks.
okay, cool. So Google is obviously the most important, the most powerful search engine, and we do test and expect sources to know Google in depth, Boolean logic, search operators, and also image searches and other special searches Google provides. Will you be driving the slides, David?
Yes, sorry. I just want to make sure you're finished before advancing.
Okay. X-ray search is so important that we have put it in a separate category, and that is the use of the operator-sided search engines, usually Google. And it allows us to extract and search for information on social sites, content databases, associations, conferences, and so forth from user profiles. And it is extremely important to understand what is present on public profiles, what can be x-rayed, and what templates, what operators to use to do the best job of precisely extracting the values. Okay. Cross-referencing. It's one of my favorite terms, cross-referencing. So we have some information we're seeking for other information. We have found a developer's profile on GitHub. We don't know what company they work for, or we don't know their degree, what job responsibilities have. Or we would have a blind resume, would be finding the name of the person, or quite commonly we would have a social profile and we would be looking for contact information. And of course, this additional knowledge is helpful for search, for pre-assessing potential candidates, deciding whether we want to reach out, and warming up the initial interaction, because now we know a few details that we can talk about. Go ahead. LinkedIn, previous slide, cannot live without LinkedIn. It's the largest, of course, professional database. And for pretty much any job opening, there will be some matching candidates on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn has a pretty horrible user interface and constantly changing search algorithm. You need to understand how each search filter works, and it's often not the way you think, not the way it may occur, you may expect it works, especially LinkedIn Recruiter, and we need to know how to x-ray as well. Next. So other social sites, as we spoke about x-raying, many sites can have profiles. Now, LinkedIn stands at the core in the middle in terms of its data and ability to search, but there is, of course, Facebook, Twitter, other major social sites, and knowledge how to source on those sites is just as important. So, talking about our new book, and we have gone through the categories of questions, and we are about to show you some questions and answers so that you get a good feeling. Now, the uses of the book, in addition to an aid to take our exam certification, the next one is in January, and then it's quarterly, and we hope many of you will, but you can also just use the book to self-test, to test your sourcing skills. Don't look at the answers, try to address it, compare the solutions, compare the answers, find areas to improve. If you manage a team, and we have quite a few people today who are managers, you can assess your team's sourcing skills. You can pick some questions and go through the whole thing, which will probably take a while. But you can pick some questions, you can modify them, ask us for help. You will find areas where they may benefit from additional training, you may benefit from getting additional knowledge. Say they're proficient with LinkedIn, but not in Google. Okay? And last but not least, you are, of course, able to utilize these questions at interviews to test sourcing competence. Okay. David, do you want to take over or do you want me to continue?
Oh, sure. I'm happy to jump in.
Okay. And any questions, please use your questions control panels.
Yes, absolutely. It's a great way to communicate any questions or comments to us throughout the presentation. Unfortunately, we can't open up individual microphones. So for everybody, we've prepared some example challenges and questions similar to those that are in the book and on our exam. And we really like to see how some of you folks think about these questions, getting a feel for how they work, and also if they work for you. So as you can see here, the first one is from the exploratory research category and is, what organization offers the certified ethical hacker professional credential? We've provided 3 options, A, B, and C. And, we're curious if you type in the questions box your answers to the question, which one you think it is. And of course, also alternatively, really how would you approach it? How you approach a question is often a lot more important than the answer you come up with at the end of the day. So I'm just looking over the questions box and, taking a look at a few of the options that people are presenting. I've actually got at least one of each. Everybody's saying, from what everyone's saying, some people are saying A, some people are saying B, some people are saying C. So it's interesting. We could have a good discussion about that. So ultimately, the important thing to think about is how would you, approach the question. So we'll reveal the answer as well as how we would approach the solution. So ultimately, it is B, which is the International Council for E-Commerce Consultants, which doesn't sound like someone who would really do like a hacking certification. So if you're just kind of inferring from the possible answers, it may not be the optimal strategy. Ultimately, a simple Google search may solve a question like this, where if you just put into a search, certified ethical hacker, you'll find the websites that most closely relate to that term. In this case, the EC or E-Commerce Consultant Council website. On the website, they do describe both the full name of the organization as well as the credential. So that's, roughly speaking, the optimal solution here. The other answers kind of make sense, but they're not ultimately accurate. Right? So it'd be an example of what we would ask in terms of an exploratory research challenge. Looks like my numbering's off, but number 2 is a question about Google search. So again, just real quick for everybody, give it about a minute or two for some answers to populate here. How would you go about addressing this type of challenge? I mean, if you know the answer, obviously knowing the answer in advance is always a great way to answer a challenge. But if you don't know, how do you find out, right? Questions like this, a basic search may not be enough to answer. Maybe it is. You can approach these from a lot of different areas. And again, the question is, which of the following are not currently valid Google search operators? And if there's more than one, of course, we'd be looking for all the answers. All right. Once again, a great variety of possible answers. Let's take a look at the solution as well as. Oh, No, somebody had asked, can everyone see your responses? The answer is no. That's why we use the questions box instead of the chat box. So that's Irene and I are viewing your questions and comments, but that's it. Yeah. Cool. Cool. So solutions, answers are B, C, and D. Right? File type is, of course, an active Google operator, but not capitalized. The tilde, I believe, is the squiggly line there, and then the near colon operator. None of those are currently valid. However, there are quite a few online guides, supposed comprehensive guides to Google operators, that will proudly tell you as of today that those are active. So it can be really challenging to if you just Googled valid Google operators, you'd get lists, all kinds of different lists. Some would be right, some would be wrong, some would be very outdated, even though they have recent dates on them, because people just copy old blog posts, things like that. The option or the best way to really find out if a search works, if a search operator does anything on any platform, and this is not limited only to Google, is to create a search experiment. Find a search. Try a search using the operator. Try a search without the operator. Same keywords, just different operators, right? With and without. If the results are functionally the same, with and without the operator, then the operator is likely having very little or no impact on the search and is thus not a valid search operator for that platform. So a little bit of logic, a little bit of science can get you around tricky questions like this. There was a question, the capital not isn't a Boolean operator on LinkedIn, on Google, and the answer is no. It's the minus sign immediately preceding a keyword or a search term that would remove or exclude terms from the results. The capital not hasn't been active on Google in quite a few years, actually. Tilde used to be valid, yes, and yeah. All right. Makes sense, hopefully. We cover a lot about the thinking behind search in many of our training courses as well. But the book lays out this type of thinking for the solutions for each individual question, over 120 of them. So how about 3? I'm experiencing a bit of a screen artifact. Let me see if I can refresh. Was from our X-ray category, and as Irene had highlighted, this is I'm getting sorry about that. Somebody had pointed out that there was an image that wasn't properly, there it is. I think that fixed it. Challenge number 3 was an X-ray question, and the X-ray category, as Irene pointed out, is extremely important as a subcategory. Knowing your basic Google search terms and options is important, but site searches are so fundamental to exploring new sites and data sources and finding out what types of information you can pull from them, that we pull it out and make it its own thing in both our training and our certification and testing. And we recommend that anyone assessing sourcing skills do the same. So if we look at the best template to use, template structure is one type of question that we ask in this category. Sometimes we'll do another practical exercise type where we will posit the existence of a document meeting certain criteria and ask you to find it and pull some information from it. But this is one of the 2 main types of questions we ask here. So several people have chimed in now, and I hope everyone's got like a browser open in the other screen or something, because that's probably the easiest way. Anybody guessing is probably got a 1 in 3 shot. A few people have thrown out some answers, and I'm once again seeing all of them, but C is the predominant answer I'm hearing. Some people said all of them will work. Cool, great. No, I love the answers. So in fact, A winds up being the best option for this particular search. So the poll the crowd option might have missed on this one. If we look at if we actually perform each of these searches and review the results, that's probably the most comprehensive way to approach a question like this. And in general, when you're assessing what's the best way to X-ray a new site, you want to try a few different options, try some experiments, carefully review the results, and get a real sense for what's working, what's not, and why. Those are important things to be reviewing, as you develop your process for exploring any particular website. So in this case, all of the options work. Most searches work, right? They produce results. But the real question is, are they producing the results you expect them to? And if you review them, you'll see that option A ultimately produces results that are all meeting our criteria, whereas B will miss some of those results because it's targeting a subset, and not all of the matching profiles are in that subset. And option C has the potential to include quite a few results that are not the right type of person at all. So there was a question, a very neat question about the difference between X-raying a particular website versus a domain. And I'd be happy to maybe put a pin in that. We may have some time for additional Q&A towards the end, and I'd be happy to answer. Or, we'd be happy to follow up after the call today. We could provide some contact information towards the end. Site, though, if we say a site versus a domain, typically they are used interchangeably. If we say like site : LinkedIn.com, LinkedIn.com is the domain name, but it's also the website. So same difference a lot of the times. There are some cases where that's not true, but the technical details may not be interesting to everyone. So maybe we'll review that later. So number 4, so our fourth category, cross-referencing. Which is actually closely related to some of the same skills we apply in general Google searching as well as, in our exploratory research, but with a particular focus on taking what we know and using it to surface data or information that we don't know. And there are a broad range of applications for this skill set. This particular question is probably one of the easier ones in this type of category. So in this case, we've provided all but one part of a valid email address, and we're just asking you to fill in the blank. What's the missing piece here? And the question is, what is the missing piece, but also how would you approach this? So this is the non-multiple choice, the real tough ones, right? Nothing to get. Yeah, the approach, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a couple of different Google searches popping up in the answers. Yeah, so I think everyone could clock this one pretty quick. You can see the answers S, and we can get it by putting some or all of this in quotes from the question. And in fact, because of the peculiarities of how the asterisk operator works on Google, this is a valid search and will produce results. Yeah, cool. I think everybody got. Yeah, you could, of course, also just Google the person's name and the company name even and see if it comes up. It might. But, so yeah, there's a lot of strategies that can work, but we've presented probably the simplest one, which would be to search for what we have to surface what we don't. Yeah, this particular example probably works without quotation marks, simply because it is a single character missing. You'll see very similar results. The picture actually doesn't have a lot of relevance. That's actually, this is very new to Google, these little icons. So, yeah. Oh, okay. No, sorry, I missed the first part of what you were saying. Yeah, no, yeah, you can also use some verification techniques once you've found some samples in your search. You can use some verification techniques to identify did you find the right one. But in this case, I think it's fairly straightforward to say that there wouldn't be too many other people with the identical construction. Yeah. Cool. So we do have 2 more, one for LinkedIn and then one for other. social sites, if you will. And this one's a bit of a long one, so I'm going to give it a second. I'm also going to read it out. But example, sourcing practical challenge number 5 for LinkedIn. If you search on LinkedIn for people and your criteria is that they must currently work at Agilent Technologies and also have the current job title of CEO, you will find several hundred people, which, I mean, reasonably can't possibly be true, right? I mean, there can't be 200 CEOs of a company. It would be madness, chaos, right? These are obviously false positives, and the question becomes then, why are we getting these false positives? Because answering that question can help us to avoid the false positives in our searches. So what we're asking for is ultimately why or what of the following could be potential reasons why we're seeing so many people who work there. Wow, everybody's a LinkedIn hater, right? Everyone jumped immediately to like the worst case. Somebody's optimistic. Unfortunately, the optimism is not well supported by the facts in this case. But yeah, so everyone has kind of noted D is in fact the correct answer. The options were some people forget to close their jobs, and so they remain listed as current. Of course, Agilent has only had 3 past CEOs, so that can't be all of the explanation. Some fake or duplicate profiles are coming up. Big part of the case in this particular circumstance. In fact, B is the #1 contributor in this very specific example, but certainly not the only one. And some people have several current jobs, right? So that they're like the CEO of like, a food cart, but they're also, like a data entry clerk at Agilent, something like that. All of these definitely can contribute to these types of false positives, and we review some of that in the detailed solution. And this is, by the way, roughly the structure we lay things out in the book. We have our questions, and then we have our separate answer and solutions. The reason we separate them is so you can, try them first, right? Versus jumping right to the answers. One question, is there... I'm not sure I understand that actually about the several URLs, but yeah, okay. No, well, there definitely are a lot of fake profiles, right? So one way to sort of determine the answer. So the real thing is, if you didn't know all of this going in, you have to think about, logically which ones are true based on what you know about how LinkedIn functions and the ability to leave a job open versus closing it out. But then for things like fake profiles, you have to be able to analyze the results and check it out. Like, okay, does this make sense? Is this right? Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. I think everybody got that one. Okay, yes. There was a question about um, canonical profile URLs. No, that's not really affecting this because we're asking about the searches that you do within LinkedIn itself versus not an X-ray search, but instead an internal LinkedIn search. In case that wasn't clear. Yeah. All right. So our final category example question for our sourcing from other social sites category. Our example challenge number 6 was, which of the following are Twitter search operators, currently valid Twitter search operators or applications? So when we find new sites to source from, sometimes they're like big sites out there. There's maybe only a few left right now that are currently open, that is web accessible social profiles that have useful people search functionality. Probably about 4 or so that have really large user bases, 300 plus million, 300 plus million. Of course, there's many that have tens of millions or hundreds of thousands of users. But when we find new sites, whatever size they are, we kind of need to learn how they work. And the bigger the site and the more often we return to it, the more important that becomes. So that's, why, one of the reasons we ask questions like this. So in this category, we cover things like, basic search on some of the very large sites, but also we cover questions that are about exploring information about how sites work on smaller niche sites as well. Yeah, we got some, there's a link to the, somebody provided a link to the help documentation that explains all the operators, and that's a pretty good guide. There's a couple things it misses, but it's mostly accurate. Just not. There's a few other things that aren't on there. Oh, there's the if you like Google Twitter search operators, like it's like the second result. It's just the developer documents for Twitter. We'll see if I can copy paste that out and show you it after the slides. Yeah? All right, so yeah, there's quite a few places you can find information about these. Of course, we can always try all of the operators, right? That's one way to find the solution. It takes a little time, but you can do it. So our solution is that A, B, C, and E. So all but D. You cannot search by file type attachment on Twitter, but all the rest of these work and have specific use cases. URL is a neat one. Of course, you can search for all tweets that have links in them with the links filter too. Yeah. So you could search for a list of Twitter search operators, like a Google search like this, and there's this link here, which I think is the same one that somebody shared. So we do actually provide that here on this slide when you get your copy of the slides deck. You can click this link, and that's the same one someone shared in their answer. A, C, and E are all there. B is not listed on that page. And to find out that B is in fact valid, you could of course try it in a search. But if you actually just Google min_retweets, you will find several sites that list some undocumented Twitter search operators, including that one, most of which actually work quite well. But if you want to see if they work or not, you can always apply the same technique as we use to find out which Google searches are working. Google search operators are working, which is to construct some sample searches and experiments to see, do they have an impact on the results? Are they impacting the results in the way that we expect them to? Exactly. So I think a lot of people were on the right track there. The only tricky one really was B, because the official documentation contains A, C, and E. Somebody asked a question about how do you find, who is following someone on Twitter. If you have a Twitter account, you can just go to a Twitter, and it's not a private profile, hidden profile. You can go to the account and just kind of click on the followers list, and it'll show you who's following them. There's a number of third-party tools which can also help you analyze and even download data like that, all of which have their own peculiarities, change over time. But if you just go to a Twitter profile, somebody asked, how do you find on Twitter if someone is following someone else? You can just go and see if the follower is in the list of followers on the profile. Yeah? Well, there's kind of so you probably have to exercise a third-party tool if you wanted it instantly. Something like, I don't know if FollowerWonk still does it, but there's quite a few third-party Twitter research tools to analyze who follows who. The problem is that their data isn't always real time. So, I mean, it's tricky. That's definitely one of those questions that if somebody told me, like in an interview, if I asked them how to do that, and they told me I'd use a third-party tool, like, one of these, FollowerWonk or listed 2 or 3 others, I'd assume they kind of knew what they were talking about at that point. The specifics will vary by the target profile, though. Yeah, no, good discussion. Cool. All right, so we definitely wanted to talk a little bit about our recommendations for um, preparing for certification in general. Of course, we're happy to provide a little bit of information about our specific training offerings, but these are we recommend roughly the same outline or progression if you're utilizing another training or developing your own. We have similar recommendations in terms of how to prepare for either our certification or any type of similarly modeled assessment for sourcing skills. In general, focused training and focused practice over time are key. Um, you definitely need to exercise these skills before you, really become assessed on them. You're not going to memorize this cheat sheet overnight. These are practical skills. That's part of why we focus on practical skills in both our assessment and training because, um, anybody can memorize a cheat sheet given a day or two, but it takes time to develop real skills. And that's what we're testing on here. That's what we recommend that you be testing on, um, when you provide these uh, assessments to your own teams or to yourself. Um, when we provide training, we also focus on that as well as the practice element, right? There's a number of ways to become, to get additional training either on individual topics or on all things sourcing through our particular offerings. We include, courses which are webinars such as this one, but obviously focused more on, specific educational topics. And they include the, recordings and slides of those presentations, as well as follow-on support. We do have a subscription offering, which is an excellent value in terms of being able to access absolutely everything we do. Our live webinars, the ones that aren't free like today's, our recording library, all of our eBooks, including the Sourcing Answers book that we've just released in. The exam is all included in that. So not just subscribers, but in fact people who practice and people who focus on skills development in advance of testing do significantly better. I have some statistics on exam performance coming up in a couple of slides. Um, and we do have a number of incentives for teams looking to get training or professional development together. So, let's see here. One question that comes up frequently if people are planning to take our exam, but we would recommend a similar developmental progression regardless of the goal or provider for your training. We have a number of courses such as, we have a number of courses in our training library, which you can view here, but the ones we would probably recommend focusing on with our courses would be our there we go. So I just noted that for some reason, there we go. We had some outdated titles on the list there, so just wanted to tweak that real quick. Sorry. What we recommend is a foundational course or a focus that introduces core concepts and key skills and what is, both a broad overview of the sourcing function roles and core skills and concepts with just a little bit of foundation laying in each area. Something like our whatever recruiter needs to know about sourcing course exactly meets that need. But we recommend a foundational intro that has not a whole lot of depth on any one subject, but that provides a wide range of information, lays the groundwork for all that follows. We recommend focusing next on core search skill best practices, Boolean search as well as leveraging search operators. Our Boolean strings basics course does this, though it's not the only viable way to prepare for this type of information. we recommend then applying that to something like LinkedIn because it ties back the unfamiliar into the familiar. A lot of people have prior experience using LinkedIn, whether they use advanced or Boolean search on it or not. And so tying the focuses from these fundamental learnings back into something practical that people are already familiar with is a good integrative step in the learning process. We then typically recommend returning back to less familiar territory and having reinforced those core search skills, applying them to a broader range of exercises. Sourcing without LinkedIn or identifying new data sources, places to source information, candidates' profiles, lists, things like that. That sort of course is an excellent way then to expand, having reinforced those, search fundamentals. And then finally, we would typically recommend capstoning with a return to some of the higher level, more of a reinforcement of theory and course concepts to just make sure that the ideas behind the actual practical skills are there, because sometimes there is no predefined answer to your question. You need to derive it, and you need to have both the applied practical skills as well as the theory to do so effectively. So that would be what we would recommend as an overall training model to develop these core competencies. And generally speaking, to answer the question that came in, a minimum of about 3 to 6 months is probably recommended prep time for anything like a comprehensive exam such as the one that we provide, though obviously depending on your outcome and what you already know going into such a course of study, it may be less, it may be more. But yeah, so good question. So somebody had said that if we're knowledgeable enough, we can probably derive any potential training information from first principles and Google searches. Yeah, I mean, if you want to spend the time to develop your own training courses, I mean, we hope many people do and will. We provide what we think are some of the best around, and we've done all that work for folks. But yeah, by all means. There was a question, do we how often do we update our content? As often as it needs to be fully up to date. So some courses, the information changes all the time. Like we update our LinkedIn course like quarterly almost. Other courses like the fundamentals of core search best practices don't change a lot over time, but we update everything at least once a year, often twice. So yeah, everything is absolutely less than 12 months old in our library. Any suggestions on GitHub sourcing in terms of training content or best practices? I mean, best practices, I like using the internal search to pull up emails. I like surfacing emails through their interface, and I like X-raying to find specific profiles. Do we have a course on it? Yes, it's called How to Find and Attract Technical Talent. It covers GitHub and a half dozen other sites. Can you get more than 100 results in a Google search engine, custom search engine? No. But there's some ways to work around that. Yeah, the dot patch at the end of the commits, right, for GitHub emails. Good note. Somebody called out. Cool. So just wanted to provide like a little bit of additional information about our certification and some of our other options. And as I'm doing so, I know Irina's answering a number of other questions in the background. If there's a question that doesn't get asked or answered for you in the next 8 minutes or so that we have, we'll be happy to follow up with you afterwards, and we'll be providing our contact information so you can reach out to us as well. This is what our credential looks like when it's earned, and the only prerequisite for our credential is to pass the exam. It's purely proficiency based. If you know it and you take the test and you pass, you're good to go. No other elements. You don't have to take particular courses first. There are ones we recommend for training and development, but if you know this stuff cold and just want to earn your credential, by all means, you could sign up for the exam a la carte. We offer the following test windows this year. We have one coming up next week, as well as 3 others in 2020. and we do typically offer them quarterly in each calendar year. The exam by itself is $3.99 for an individual. Actually, the passing threshold, it is graded pass-fail. It's not a ranked proficiency. It's a absolute competency exam. But the passing threshold is 80% competency across all categories. Yeah. And yeah, so $3.99 per person, though we do have some team incentives on the exam pricing if you have like 4 or 5 people together or something like that. Yeah. There's a lot more like detail I could provide, but without going into absolutely all the minutiae, roughly speaking, 60 questions, 6 hours maximum. Most people who are fully prepared and really likely to pass finish it in less than 4, but we provide up to 6 hours. So roughly, yeah, about 6 minutes per question. I think that works out to. Some questions might take you 30 seconds, some might take you 10 minutes, but on average, we expect people to be able to answer all 60 questions in less than 6 hours, and often quite a bit less so. It's a single seating exam, and so there's no stop and go. You sit down, you test until you're done or the time runs out. We do provide, with that pricing, $3.99, you do get 2 shots at the exam. We do that in part because the exam is proctored online, or rather it's not proctored, it's delivered online. You take it from home or work or wherever you happen to have an internet connection. And sometimes the internet goes down. If the internet dies halfway through a test, obviously we can't count that, but we also don't count it against you. We give you another chance to take the exam. Yeah. Some stats. Some people always ask, like, well, people who get certified or take their exam, how many years of experience do they typically have? And are they really sourcers? Or are they just recruiters who do sourcing part time? You can see we have quite a few people take it from all backgrounds, right? The largest subset of people taking our credentialing exam are about 3 to 5 years total experience, though we've had people take and pass the exam with less than 6 months or even fewer. Obviously, more experience tends to be tied to more proficiency. More skills, not always, obviously, but often. And so we'll see slightly higher pass rates among more experienced folks. And of course, from people who do sourcing more of the time. While very few people claim 40 plus hours a week sourcing, most people are in that, about 10 plus hours per week. We do have a solid chunk, though, who source rarely, and in part are taking our training or development to get better at it so they can do more of it. Somebody asked about pass rates, so I did have, sorry to ignore your question, I did have a slide prepared on that, though. There's a question, are we sharing the slides? Yes, we have a presentation being recorded, and we also have our slide deck, and we'll be sending out the slides at the very least. I think we'll be able to provide a recording, though don't quote me on that quite yet. But yes, we have our slides prepared, and we'll send this out afterwards. Yeah, a couple more notes about what you'll get at the end in just a moment. But overall pass rate, a little under 90%, and you can see that most people pass on the first attempt. Certainly the vast majority of people who are prepared pass on their first attempt. Folks who do not undergo any sort of formal training or focus or preparation, who just kind of wing it, typically don't do as well. There's typically 2 reasons for winging it. One is that you don't know what you don't know, and one is that you're a super expert, and so that kind of skews the percentages here, but yeah, some type of preparation is essential. We really have a lot of background focusing on applying these same principles to teams. Obviously, whether our training library package or our exam makes sense for a team or not. We've worked with quite a few companies from all over the world, ranging from 3 to hundreds of people on the talent acquisition teams. I'm talking, not total company sizes. In those cases, everywhere from, again, 3 to tens of thousands. But we do work with all types of teams in terms of assessing needs as well as providing, either our training content that we've already developed or custom training modules, be those live, in person, on site, webinar based for distributed teams. We've had a number of training programs successfully rolled out for teams that split multiple time zones. Half the teams in Asia, half the teams in Europe, a third of the team, is in South America somewhere. Well, we can work with distributed teams and quite often do as well. It's quite a bit of fun for us. So, teams get a lot of additional benefit working through a course of study together versus, some companies obviously lay out, well, all right, everybody gets, whatever it is, $50, $100, $3 a month for professional development. Go do what you can. Teams working through systems like this together tend to see, follow-on or kind of additional benefits on top of the training itself by having, the shared frameworks for understanding, both a shared language and framework for understanding sourcing challenges and how to overcome them, how to think about sourcing, and how to be a good researcher. We also, find that providing an assessment for an entire team helps to really pull out who knows what, who may need a little work in one area versus another area, as well as ultimately what should the baseline be if you haven't already determined a proficiency baseline for existing and new hires. Setting one does a lot in terms of moving the needle in performance long term. So, some notes on that. And I think, just a quick summary. Once again, obviously, a lot of what we talked about today was the Sourcing Answers book, which is the exam and prep and assessment tool that we've developed. Yes, useful for preparing for our exam, obviously, but also useful assessment tool in many other applications itself for new hire or team. We do offer our credentialing exam quarterly. Of course, not the only way to assess people, but it is the one we stand by. We do have a training library, over 20 courses available there. We do have a subscription option available for people who want to really explore a lot of different areas in sourcing development. And of course, we do custom bespoke work for teams, large, small, anywhere in the world. We do, actually, somebody had asked, so I'm glad we have this on the slide. We do also provide sourcing as a service, sourcing and recruitment full cycle, under a different brand, or Bring Gain Recruiting is our parent operation. And as far as any additional questions you have, if there's anything you've asked that hasn't been answered either by me verbally or in line, I know Irina's been responding to questions in the questions box very actively. But if there's any additional questions, please let us know. We're almost at time, I think. But if you have any questions, please reach out to myself or to Irina through our website. We have our customer support hotline. Check our voicemails regularly. If you have inquiries specifically relating to sourcing as a service, please reach out to Irina primarily there, and we'd be happy to help you with any of that. So with that,
thank you, Irina. Also, thank you so much for coming. Hopefully this was informative, and we're looking forward to connecting with many of you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. With that, I think we're gonna stop our recording of today's session.